Microsoft over the last couple of days have released something called, or the preview version of something called Forms Professional, or Forms Pro I think it's called. So I've not had a chance to get my teeth into that properly. So my version of Forms might look slightly different to yours, but don't panic, you'll be able to pretty much get away with all of the same functionality. So let's crack on. So one of the big things that most people kind of get confused with is essentially what Microsoft Forms is. And it's essentially a surveying tool. It gives you the ability to be able to pull data in real time into your business. So for instance, if you send out customer satisfaction surveys, if you want to send an email around the office to find out who's wants to go for dinner on a particular date, or what someone's favorite type of food is, or something on those lines. Forms is the perfect tool to kind of capture that information. So let's crack on. So what we're going to be covering off is we'll have a look at show you where to find forms in Office 365. I'll then show you the basics of actually building a form. I'll show you how you can share the form, and then last but not least, we'll then have a look at all the different responses that we're going to get. And what I'm going to do is, as I'm building these forms, I'm going to share the forms with you guys, and you can actually then go through and actually start to fill them in real time. So we're going to be basically looking at the responses that you guys give me on my forms. So when you're filling the data in, feel free just to kind of make any old stuff up. It doesn't matter. It will give you a good idea of what's going to happen. So in terms of other alternate tools to Microsoft Forms, essentially there's kind of two. You generally have Google Forms, and you then have SurveyMonkey. I'd say most probably the most popular one's most probably SurveyMonkey, and again that's a paid for service, and again really good. I've used SurveyMonkey for many years, kind of to basically get training feedback and all that kind of good stuff. But one of the big things that it's finding is it's now got a lot of competition, especially from Google Forms, which has a lot of the functionality that SurveyMonkey does. But the nice thing about Google Forms is that it has that. It gives you it's free, so it's always a nice thing, but it also gives you a lot more kind of creative control over the usage of your data, and it all sits up in the cloud, and you don't have to kind of go through lots of logging in. And again, the big thing about it's free. So you had these two big companies, they've been kind of going for many years. Then what happened is, with the launch of Office 365, Microsoft introduced something called Forms. And Forms sits between a kind of middle ground of functionality between SurveyMonkey and between Google Forms. I'd say the strongest point that Google Forms has is the fact that it's so integrated into Office 365. As you see, when we start to play around with some of the data that you guys will generate, it just instantly dials into Excel, and it's really easy to use, and it's quite powerful. Is it as good and as feature rich as Google Forms? No. Or is it as good as SurveyMonkey? And again, the answer is no. So it kind of sits in this kind of middle ground. If you're not going to be doing kind of massive 50-page surveys, then Microsoft Forms is a really useful tool, and I'm a massive user of Forms personally. Essentially, I use it to kind of manage all of my training activity. So let's actually go in and have a look at Google Forms itself. Well, Google Forms, I've got Google on the brain now. Microsoft Forms can be found in your Office 365 account. So if you go onto office.com, log yourselves in, you'll then be basically presented with this page here, which is your Office 365 portal. And all you need to do to access Forms is just click on Forms. And what that will do is it will take you directly into the Microsoft Forms screen, which looks like this. So when you first start using Forms, obviously you won't have lots and lots of surveys like I do. And as I said, my entire kind of training activity all runs through Microsoft Forms. So you've got two options. You can create a new survey, or you can create a new quiz. A survey is where you want to, essentially, if you wanted to find out what everyone wanted to do for the Christmas party. So it's just a way of getting lots of information back without the need to kind of send out loads of emails and go do lots of backwards and forwarding. A quiz is a fantastic tool for knowledge checks, and they work in a very similar way. The only difference is that when you do a quiz, say for instance, if you had a multiple choice question, you could assign scores to certain answers. So performing knowledge checks is a really, really useful tool. So I'm going to just go and quickly create a new survey. So I'm just going to click there. So here's my survey. First thing I need to do is I need to give it a title. So I'm going to be nice and creative with this one, and I'm going to call it Training Survey. And again, I'll put a little smiley face in there. Wherever you add any information into a survey, what you'll find is to the right hand side of it, you'll always get this insert image option. And if you click on here, what you can then do is you can actually add images from things like your local machine, OneDrive, or upload them directly from Bing. So if I type in training and then hit search, apart from I've decided not to spell, luckily it's recognized by spelling, and I can go and grab that image and just click on add and give it a second, and what it'll do is it'll then basically add that image into my survey. So, and again, so you get an awful lot of customization with your surveys themselves. It's really, really useful when it comes to being able to create forms that you can have that level of customization. So the first thing I need to do is, as you've seen, I've put a training survey, and Microsoft, or the survey itself, has basically added in suggested questions. So what it's doing is it's looking at what my survey's called, and it's generating a set of predefined questions based off the title. So that's where you start to see Microsoft's AI function coming in. So if I want to add a question, it's really easy. I'm just going to go for choice, and I'm going to go and add a question in. So my first question is, what day is it? Question mark. And again, you get the ability to be able to play around with all the fonts and all of the kind of standardized stuff that you'd be able to expect. So next, I can then come in here and I can then start to type out my answers. And if I want to add another question, and as you see, it's just really, really easy to do. So you can keep going all the way down. So this is a multiple choice question. Friday. I'm going to leave the weekend out because obviously everyone's favourite day would be the weekend. Once I've added my questions in, if there's a selection I don't like, I can very quickly just remove it by clicking the delete button. If I want people to be able to select multiple answers, I've got the ability down here to go multiple answers. If the question is mandatory, I've then also got the little ellipses down the bottom right hand corner. And what this gives me the ability to do is very quickly but add additional details. So for instance, I can do shuffle options, or I can add a subtitle to the question. So in this case, I'm going to go and add a quick subtitle, which is just going to say, select the day. And a smiley face in there again. So that is my first question. To add another question, all I do is just click on add question, and this time I've got lots of different options. I've got multiple choice, which we've looked at, text, we've got a rating. You can also do a specific date question, and if I click on the ellipses, I then get the ability to be able to add rankings or Likert questions. And with, again, this bit down here, which is the Net Promoter Score, is a brand new piece of functionality based on the fact that this is Forms Pro. So when you guys go in, I have no idea what this bit does, but I'll go and play with that over the next couple of days. So in the next case that I want to do is I want to do a ranking question. So the question's going to be rate your favorite food. Chips, please. Carrots. And again, you can adjust these questions as you need to. So there's my first question, there's my second question, and again I've got my ellipsis down the bottom, and that one just lets me add a subtitle. So if I don't want to see it, I can just remove it. You can make your surveys really as big as you want. My advice with Microsoft is really kind of, you want to keep it to about kind of maybe 10 or 15 questions. You don't want to do like a skills matrix with 500 questions in here, for instance. But again, you just keep going and building your survey up. So I'm just going to go. And here, for instance, this is a ranking question, so I can choose all the different levels. I'm going to go and choose 10. I've then got the option to be able to choose stars or numbers. I'm going to go stick with stars. And this, I'm going to go and add labels. So here I can then choose not very, crazy happy. And that's my scale. So first star is obviously not very happy. 10th star is obviously crazily happy. So, and again, that's the basics of creating your form. Again, it's just planning out the questions, thinking about what you want to do with it. And as you're building your questions, you always have this little option over here to insert media. So again, I can insert stuff like images, or I can even insert videos. So let's go images. Let's have a look at, let's see what Bing brings me back. So I'll go and put in this little picture of Mr. Happy. So what it lets you do is just add a little bit of character to your survey. So it's not just words. You can really start to bring your surveys to life. And that's essentially the basics of forms. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to start to get this form ready to be sent. So up here, as you can see, I've got a couple of options. I've got send survey, and it'll then give me a couple of options. And again, yours will look a little bit different because you're going to be using what standard forms. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and just play around with the options just so I can customize it. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to go to send survey, and I'm just going to go and let's get a link for this one actually. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab that link, Control C or copy it, and I'm just going to send this survey out to you guys. So in a second, you will all get an email from me. So if you see your inbox light up, that is just me. And in a second, you should see you've got an email. So a couple of options up in the settings. So at the moment, I've got anyone who can fill this link out. Anyone who has the link can respond, and I'm accepting responses. So when you get that survey, do feel free just to fire it back. And that is, in essence, the very basics of forms. So if you guys can all check your emails, you should have got an email with a hyperlink for me. And what will happen is I should start seeing my responses plop into my inbox as soon as you guys start filling them out. And again, I can edit these questions in real time. So if I realize I've made a spelling mistake or something on those lines, I can very quickly just come in and make a change to the form. And when you guys click on that link, you'll actually be able to see what it looks like. And this is essentially what your survey will look like when you go to click on it. So it will just be something really, really simple. And the nice thing about the Forms tool is not only is it available on standard kind of computers, but it's also visible through mobile phones as well. So if you answer the link via your mobile phone, you should find that it just pops up essentially what's on screen. So it gives you a really nice preview of what is going to be looking like. So let's see if I've got any form responses. So I've got 5. So thank you very much for those of you that filled out my responses. So the first thing you'll find is it will show you how many invitations you have and how many current responses you want. So if I want to click on responses, it will give you a really quick dashboard of all of the key information that's come across. So for instance, the average completion time was 33 seconds, the response ratio, the response trend, and if I scroll down, it should start to see all of the different bits of information. So for instance, here you can see all of the kind of responses that have come through, if they're anonymous, if they're tracked. Now, one of the really nice things about this is I get the ability just to click on Export All, and it will open up all of those responses in an Excel spreadsheet, which is just opened on my screen. So as I can see, I've got a very nice happy rating. So it's thank you very much for being so happy. And again, all of you got the correct day, which is always fantastic to see. So as you see, that's essentially how Forms works. And as you see there, the information that comes back is really, really quick and it's instantaneous. And from the bare bones of Forms, that really is about as complicated as it gets. Now, when you're actually coming back to build your surveys, you can do some really nice things with this. So you can create branching surveys, you get the ability to be able to kind of change stuff like the themes. So you can go in and add custom pictures if you so desire, just to make it a bit more kind of corporate friendly to your particular organizations. And that's and really that is as complicated as Forms gets. There are a couple of really cool things that Forms can also do. So as you saw, all of those responses basically came out as a kind of Excel spreadsheet, and that's a slice in time of those responses. So at the moment I'm kind of having a look at the question responses. Give it a second and it should pop up with basically a kind of little overview of all of the questions that were asked. So as you see, it gives you a really nice dashboard without the need to kind of do lots of Excel analysis. But Forms can go one step beyond this. So this is what's called a static form, which means if you want to do any analysis on it, you'd have to come into the actual view response section itself and look at it. Whereas there's another way that you can create forms, and what it will do is it will actually update your data in real time into a live Excel spreadsheet. So you can have charts auto update, and that is all powered by OneDrive. So here's one I've already created, and all you need to do to get this function to work is when you're in a OneDrive folder, just right click, go to New, and then go to Forms for Excel. And we'll give it test 2, and it will work in exactly the same way as the previous option. Now, the big difference between this and what we did back with the survey that I just sent out is this has the ability to actually update, as I said, Excel spreadsheets in real time, to the point where when I go to send out the next survey, I'll open up the spreadsheet and you'll actually see your data plopping onto the spreadsheet. So I'm just going to jump back out of there, and I'm going to go and open up the form that I just created. So as you can see, this is the training questions that I've created, and it opens up in Excel. And again, as you can see, it's completely blank. And if I go to data, or sorry, insert, and I actually want to view the form that's sitting on top of this Excel spreadsheet, I can very quickly just go into Forms, and I'm just going to go to Edit Form. So here's something I made just before the session. Again, it works in exactly the same way. So all I've done is, what's your favorite day of the week? What's your favorite pet? How much do you like chocolate? What's your favorite day of the year? So they're my generic questions that I'm going to go through and ask. So again, I'm just going to go and share this out with you guys. So I'm just going to grab that information. So I've copied that out as a hyperlink, and I'm just going to email that out. So give me a second and I will just get that ready. So when you're emailing out surveys or anything along those lines, my top tip is always to make sure you use the BCC field when you're sending any information out. So what you guys will notice is when you get the email form, I've just got a quick question. Is forms for Excel only in Pro? No, Forms works in with Forms Pro is, like I said, Microsoft's kind of beta, but you will have it on your 365 account. If you can't find it, wait till the end of the session and I'll do some screen sharing with you and I'll help you find it. There, Penny. So if you get stuck, don't worry. Okay. So you guys are all about to get my form through. So that should now be out with you. And what I'll do is I'll go and open up that Excel spreadsheet that we looked at earlier. So when you guys start filling out that data, it will populate in this spreadsheet in real time, he says. But again, anything when it's done live, there's always that element of it might not go according to plan. So you guys should have all received the email that I just sent, which should have the questionnaire, very similar to the one that I just did a couple of minutes ago. Go through, start to fill out, and what you'll find is once you've done it, just click on save. And that data should then start to populate onto my Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully, I'll say that with a bit of trepidation. So at the moment, no one's filled out my survey, but I'll just make sure that all the settings are done. So yeah, so anyone with the form can respond, and it's accepting responses. So let's see what it comes back with. So this is essentially how I create or how I collate my training feedback. So my line manager, there we go. So again, your data's automatically hitting the spreadsheet, and as you can see, it's just kind of flying in to the onto the spreadsheet. So this is essentially how I collate my Excel training feedback, or any of my training feedback. My line manager has this spreadsheet, which he as people leave me feedback via my feedback form, it instantly updates graphs and charts and PowerPoint presentations, and it just makes life a lot more automated. So if you're collecting lots of data, say for instance via paper form, as you see, this is an ideal solution for being able to get all of that information in very quickly and very easily. A prime example of this is whenever I used to work in a previous company and they were doing the Christmas party, they'd always send generally out loads of emails, and there'd be loads of internet or loads of email traffic based off what days people could do, what activities did people want to take part in. So what I did was I created a form which contained all of that information. Do you have to? No, you don't have to have 365 to partake in a survey. What it'll do is it will basically just open up a temporary website which the person goes through. So in essence, anyone, if you were to forward that link that I've just sent out to you onto anyone in your business, even your friends and family, even if they don't have access to Office 365, they would still be able to use Forms. So again, for collating feedback from customers, it's a fantastic tool. And then once your data's in Excel, obviously you can then start to do pivot tables and start to do more interactive reporting. And it's, again, just a very quick and easy way of being able to collate lots of detail. And that really is Forms in a nutshell. There's not much more that you can kind of really go on about it because it is that simple to use. My top tips for using it are, again, kind of think about the number of questions that you're going to have on the form. Don't have hundreds. My advice is kind of keep it between kind of 10 to kind of 20 questions potentially. And also think about if you want questions to be mandatory or anything along those lines. Oh, someone's just asked if you can put your company logo into the design. You can, to a certain extent. So one of the big advantages Google Forms has over Microsoft Forms is the fact that you get a lot more customization. Essentially, say for instance, if I wanted to add the Mirus logo into this, what I could do is I could come across, go to training questions, and I could go to Mirus IT, and let's just go and have a look at. I'm going to go, if Pippa who's one of a head of marketing sees me using an old logo, I will get shot, so I need to make sure I use the right one. I'm just going to go and click on add. So yeah, you can, to a certain extent, add an element of branding, such as what I've done just there, but you don't get the ability to be able to kind of move stuff around as you would do in Google Forms to a certain extent. You can also change the wider theme, so I can go to theme, and I can then click on upload an image. So here, for instance, I'll go and take a picture of the guys playing some table tennis. So you can add a decent amount of customization to the forms themselves. And it's very much a case of, if you do start to add loads of pictures and stuff into your document, do go into preview and just have a look at how that will look. So obviously it looks perfectly fine on a computer. If I go to a mobile, what it'll do is it'll strip out all the pretty pictures, but you do have that option. So that really is it for forms. It's a really nice, simple tool that if you've got access to 365 from a paid account, you get access to it. Even if you've just got a free personal account, you also get access to it. So it's a great little tool. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? Feel free to just put them into the IM. If not, feel free to kind of shoot off. And thank you very much for your. Oh no, we've got one question coming through, which is being typed furiously by Penny. But I mean, I've been using Forms for about 3-4 years, and it's very very kind of flexible in terms of what you can do for it. And there is quite a lot of content on Microsoft's Forms website, which I'll send you a link to in the follow-up email, which is, again, you said Forms in Excel works in OneDrive. Does this mean that it can also work in SharePoint? Yes, it does. So you can kick off, you can create a form within SharePoint. If I remember correctly, you've got to set it up via a group, which is basically done in almost exactly the same way. So it's just done through this forms from groups. So any forms which have been shared by your group would essentially kind of be stored here. But you can go into SharePoint and create a form directly from it, if I remember correctly. Okay, is there a place where we can find templates or commonly used? That is a very good question. Off the top of my head, say for instance, I mean, I'm the prominent user of Forms within Mirus. If I wanted to share something, I can very quickly just kind of go left click on it, and I can then just share that form out with individuals. And one of the bits that you will find is that if you do accidentally delete a form, it will disappear into your Forms recycle bin. That's something that Microsoft recently added, but yes, you can share forms. So generally what I would advise is you have a keeper of the forms who's in control of kind of setting up all of the kind of key information, and then they basically can then just share those forms directly with the relevant parties. I hope that answered. I mean, Forms is very new functionality for Office 365, and Microsoft are catching up very quickly to the more kind of feature-rich functions of stuff like SurveyMonkey and Google Forms. Okay, so Ant asked, I would love to build on your template for my charity surveys. Again, Ant, if you're more than welcome to kind of grab 10 minutes of my time, and I'll quite happily show you how you can utilize that to kind of help with your kind of charity stuff. Vanessa's asked, can you send the survey to a group of people, or do you have to add each email address separately? Well, there's multiple ways you can utilize forms. So when you go to actually share a form, let's go and let's go and grab this one. So when you go to share a form, the most common way of sharing it with individuals is utilizing stuff like the hyperlink, which you can access there. And again, you can then copy that, embed it into a website, put it into an email or anything along those lines. So that makes it really, really quick and easy to utilize. And you also have the ability to be able to do lots of different elements in it. So you've got the ability to do it via a QR code. So this QR code, for instance, I was delivering a presentation a couple of months ago, and what I did was I had the QR code embedded within the presentation. People were then able to get their phone out during the presentation, take a snapshot of the QR code, and take part in that survey directly. And there is a very slightly long-winded way of being able to then import those survey results directly into a live PowerPoint slide. Unfortunately, it's not quite as slick as I want it to be, but if you're quite familiar with Excel, you can kind of get it to auto update off the back of the survey responses, which does look really cool, but it's one of those bits that it's not quite as slick as I'd want it to be. You can send the survey out to as many people as you want, either via email, via a web link, or anything along those lines. Also, I'll just while I was here, you can also, this is the section where you come in to share as a template. So you can basically click on that, and then you get the option to be able to share that with other individuals, and they can then take copies of that template. So you can standardize things. If you want to collaborate with other individuals, you also have this link here. But any other questions around forms? I'll take the silence as a no. Thank you very much for your time. But if but what I'll do is, in the follow-up email, you guys will all get a copy of all of the MS Forms training stuff. And really, just kind of, if you get stuck, feel free just to kind of ping me a quick message, and I'll more than happily kind of help. But there's lots and lots of content on stuff like YouTube, and for those of you that are interested, there's a YouTube channel called Microsoft Mechanics, which is awesome. I get quite a lot of stuff off them. But thank you very much for your time, and hopefully I will see you on the next one.